You might notice if you start to acknowledge it in the context of your yoga practice, if you can pause and breathe and say, no, my body is perfect the way it is. There's no such thing as a destination. This is for the journey. This is the yoga. Like
Yes.
truly, this is the yoga right now, is me pausing rather than reacting and choosing a different way. If you are able to start practicing that on your mat, you might notice that the next time you get triggered in a similar way in your day-to-day life and your social life, when you feel like someone is doing something better than you start to feel inferior, you start to feel insecure, you might notice that it's easier for you to also pause and reframe that same thought pattern. So it's a phenomenal tool for, personal growth and personal development.
Hey, everybody. It's your homegirl, Kelsey Aida. Happy Monday or happy day, whatever day you listen to this podcast. Welcome back. Quick story time before we dive into today's episode. When you listen, you may be wondering where I was and why I was not on the call. And that is because I was literally just living my best life, doing my self care, hanging out in the sauna, meditating. When Lindsay messaged me and she was like, "Hey, girl, we're waiting for you to get on this Zoom call." And I was like, "Oh my God, it never made it onto my calendar." And I totally was not going to make the call in time. So the call still happened. The show must go on. Kassandra, many apologies. You're awesome. Lindsay, way to kill it by yourself. And yeah, I'll miss you guys on this episode. I'm really sorry. And, I wanted to be hard on myself about it, like my old perfectionist ways. I wanted to be like, wow, all these people are counting on you. How could you let this fall through the cracks? Blah, blah, blah. But then I was just like, you know what? I don't do that anymore. And in the spirit of self love, I'm just going to tell myself that everybody makes mistakes. I'm allowed to make them too. I'm only human, and the episode's still going to be bomb and help a bunch of people. So that's where we're at. That's why I wasn't on the call. But I love you guys, and I missed you all on this week's episode. And I hope you have a great, great week. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of High Vibe in It. I am Lindsay Robinson, certified hypnotherapist and intuitive guide. Usually we have Kelsey here with us, who is a best-selling author, manifesting queen, self-love coach. She is not here. So it's me and a guest today. We have Kassandra Reinhardt, and she is a yoga instructor and YouTuber. And we were just talking before we started recording that I probably have done one of her YouTube yogas because I only do the bite-sized ones, which I think she specializes in. So I'm really excited to dive in, listen to what she has to say, and hear more about her. So Kassandra, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be great. Okay, so usually we dive in by saying, how did you get to where you are? What's your story? What is your background? And what kind of were those moments where you knew that this is what you were going to be doing? However you want to explain it, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. I found yoga for the first time at 18, not knowing anything about it, being very, I guess, naive about the whole practice. It was just recommended to me by a friend who said I might enjoy it. It might help me be more flexible and get a little bit stronger. I was coming from the world of dance, doing a lot of ballet growing up, and even though I was dancing a ton, I had a lot of like injuries in my body. It felt like my body was falling apart. And I always really struggled with flexibility, like especially my hamstrings have always been a very problem area for me, as well as my mid to upper back. So a friend just recommended, hey, I've been going to yoga. Why don't you try yoga? And I did. And I didn't fall in love with it right away. Like I thought it was fun, but it took a while. I had to keep showing up and trying different classes and different teachers and different studios. Just doing, a handful of drop-in classes very irregularly until I found a teacher I really liked and a style I really liked. And I don't know, it's like I got it. There was something where I was like, oh, okay, I understand what the bigger, greater purpose of this practice is, because most of us know yoga as strictly a form of movement, but of course we know that yoga is a greater philosophical and spiritual system than that, incorporating lots of different kinds of modalities and tools other than just physical poses and asanas. So once I kind of found a teacher I resonated with and kind of got a little bit of a taste of what the spiritual philosophy could bring to my life, then I really dove deep and started to get super interested in it. And, shortly after that, got into my teacher training and really wanted to start teaching, but struggled with that in the beginning just because it's hard to gain employment when you don't really have the experience. Your resume is kind of blank because you're newly certified. So who's going to hire you? So I was struggling a little bit, and I really felt quite called to teaching yoga. I felt like this was a space for me that I wanted to really explore. And I was getting a little bit frustrated with the fact that I couldn't do it to the scope at which I wanted to do it. So I started YouTube, not really knowing much about that at all, just kind of going on a whim because I thought maybe it'd be fun. Maybe a few people would watch my videos,
And it's
and
very like low stakes, high reward potentially. Like, you know what I
it
mean?
is.
You don't have to
Yeah.
get up and go somewhere. You don't have to hope that people show up. You just do your thing. I feel like it's a more relaxed environment to just do what you like to do. And then that's usually when the magic happens because you're already in that space of like, I'm just doing it because I like it. You know what I mean?
Definitely. A lot of people have asked me, did I have a vision? And I didn't. I didn't. I really have always operated from this philosophy of just putting one foot in front of the other and just doing the next right thing. I don't really believe in 5-year plans or anything like that. Like it just doesn't work for me and my style. I just like to do one little step, but before you know it, when you look back, you've come so far. And I think with YouTube or teaching online in general, whether it's yoga or anything else, it's not going to be for everyone's personality type. It was a great fit for mine. It really just totally synced up with what I love to do. Like I love to be on camera. I loved it. So it felt very natural for me and very easy. Other instructors maybe will try online and maybe they're like, no, I need the feedback from people in person in order to be the best teacher I could possibly be. And the camera, it doesn't work for them, so it's not, you just have to follow like what naturally works with your strengths, and follow those breadcrumbs and keep putting one foot in front of the other rather than trying to force yourself to do something because it's what you think you should be doing. And in
Yes.
the context of like teaching yoga, it's changed a lot now, especially because of the pandemic. But before, the only pathway teachers really had was to cram in as many studio jobs as they could, teach as many classes a week as they could, maybe do some teacher trainings, maybe do some retreats, and that was it, and burn out, 10 years later because it's not sustainable. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do. So I was curious about what other possibilities might be out there. But the online yoga teacher wasn't really a thing in 2014 when I started doing this. Today, now, a lot of people are doing it, which is amazing.
They
But
probably saw you do it and they were like, I got to do this too.
well, good. Yeah, I hope so.
Absolutely.
I hope so. Yeah, might as well. But it's a really good lesson that like just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not possible. Like there are
Yeah.
probably other ways of being a really phenomenal yoga teacher that I haven't thought of yet, and that hasn't been, conceptualized yet. And maybe next year there's going to be a great new big wave of something different that none of us have, even thought of yet. But that for me, that was online yoga. And I'm glad I did it because here I am, almost 9 years later now.
So what has changed for you since you're kind of a big deal now? So like how is that what did your life look like versus when you first got started?
Well, when I first got started, my life is definitely a lot easier in a lot of ways, just because building something from the ground up takes an immense amount of work hours, focus,
Yes.
and more than anything, like what I think people misunderstand or maybe don't realize, it's the amount of new skills you have to learn. Like I came from a background in social work, and like I knew nothing about online marketing, filming, editing, social media management, building a website, doing my taxes, accounting, business law, like, and every one of those items that I've listed was something that I had to tackle and learn. Um, because I was starting from nothing, I had no money, so I couldn't even hire people to do it for me. Like I really just had to roll up my sleeves and try my best at it, you know, and I'm super thankful I did that because like what a wealth of knowledge I
Yeah.
have today, you know, like it's wonderful. But that was really, 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 really difficult and brought along many tears along the way and almost quitting very
I don't think
often.
you're cut out to be a business owner if you don't want to quit at least once, but don't. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Oh my
that act of
gosh.
like, no, I'm done. And then
I
be like,
can't do this
maybe not.
anymore.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning where you're working so hard and you're not really getting that much back,
Yes.
right? Like it's all output. There's not that much coming back in. So it really needs to be self-sustainable. Like you need to be able to fuel your own
Yes.
ambition and find joy from it. Like I'll get a lot of teachers who are like, well, how long will it take me to make X amount of dollars? And right away, I know they're not cut out for this. They're not on the right path because if you're not going to enjoy the process when you're not making income, I don't think you'll even like it, even if you do get successful. Like it's not going to bring you the joy and fulfillment that you want. So, what was a lot harder too was that I was working a full-time job. Like this isn't something I was doing. I didn't have all the time in the world. Like I had my evenings and
Yeah.
weekends. So that was very,
Were you
very
doing social
strenuous.
work?
No, so I studied social work and then I just got a job at the municipal government. So it was a very
Got it.
like administrative project
Yeah.
management type job. It was a wonderful job. It was very flexible. People were super supportive of what I was doing.
To be fair,
But
I
you
would
know,
have been shocked if you got a job doing what you actually studied for, because that's rare.
I've gone in all kinds of directions. I
Yeah.
went from social work to like speech pathology to then like corporate security. Like I've ping-ponged all over the world
Yeah.
to now end up as a yoga teacher on YouTube. But today, of course, like now that I've gained those skills, now I'm at over 2 million subscribers, like the bulk of it's not like I don't have anything left to learn, but I've learned a lot. So it's a lot easier now. My processes are in place. I know what I'm doing a lot more. Of course, like when I start a new project or try to stretch myself out, like I had 2 books get published. I created
Mhm.
products which are now in stores. Like these were huge new mountains for me to climb, but nothing will ever compare to having to start a
Yeah.
YouTube channel, knowing nothing. Like
Yeah.
that
And
was hard. But
I want to go back to when you said, well, I want to just talk for a second more about how the journey that you had was difficult. And I think about when I first started my business with my hypnotherapy practice online, because I was doing great in person. And then when you're starting, I moved and didn't want to get an office. And I basically was like, I just want to do sessions online now. I want to be virtual. And it's a whole thing. Like it's a whole different animal than with the potential to explode beyond your wildest dreams. And at the same time, yes, that journey to how do I build a website? What business cards are useless now because I'm not going to be handing them
yeah,
out. And just learning a completely different set of skills. I in the beginning was like, isn't there just one shortcut, one thing that I don't have to take the long and lonely road? But looking back, I am so grateful for that journey. And I would never deprive anyone of that path of like, you will be so glad that you learned this. You will be so glad that
yeah.
these are the steps that you took because they're just so valuable. So I'm
And
glad that
I've
you
said
talked
this
about that.
before. Like I've said this before somewhere else, but there's messaging right now about entrepreneurship and about getting people to go online and create their side hustles and their, you know, to
Mm,
take what they love and bring it online. And some of the messaging I think is super damaging and it's all around outsource what you don't like to do. Like there's big push around outsourcing and hiring out. And I feel like that has its place, but I would never recommend that beginners and newcomers right from the get-go outsource the skills they should learn, even if it's not your area of expertise. At some point, of course, bring someone on who can do the
yeah.
job better than you so you can focus on your area of expertise. I totally get that. But in the beginning, you're so vulnerable. If you don't even know how to do the bare minimum and the basic of the task in which you're trying to find an employee for that you're trying to contract out, how are you ever going to be able to manage that person that you bring on? That person can be robbing you blind. And, you know, like I've had that experience where I was like, oh, I don't want to learn how to do ads, you know, how to
Oh
do Facebook
gosh,
ads and Google
ads.
ads. That was such a huge mental block for me and a big hurdle. And I was like, why would I do this? Like, I'm a yoga teacher. I should just hire someone, an online marketing specialist to come and do it. And I did that. And it was just I wasted money I could not afford to be wasting. You know what I mean? Like I had such little funds because they promised the world. And I have no way of knowing whether or not they did a good job because I don't really know what the job even entails, you know? So I
Yeah.
was like, I really feel like that's part of entrepreneurship that I wish the messaging got changed a little bit. And I'm like, I know it's hard, but try to at least learn the basics so that if you do get to a point where you can afford to bring someone on to take the task away from you, you're going to be able to tell if they're doing a good job or not and if this is money well spent or not, because otherwise, like, that's how you're going to want to quit, you know, because now you're
Yeah.
out of money and you feel like you've done all the right things, but you're not getting the results. So I'm just like you. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I went through that heartache and headaches and
Yeah.
just kind of pulled through. Even though it took a long time, that knowledge is really, really, really valuable.
Yeah, 100%. That's completely valid. You don't know what you don't know. So if you do know
Yeah.
it and you know how to judge if somebody's doing a good job or not, like that is extremely valuable in your business. Nobody's going to love your business the way you do, especially in the
No, no.
beginning. And you can use that passion and fuel. Yeah, 100%. I don't think anyone's ever said that on our podcast, and I'm glad that you did because I don't know how I feel about that either, about people saying I like the idea of if you don't like it, don't do it. I love that idea. However, I do think I agree completely. In the beginning, you must learn. It's
Yeah.
some things are designed. Well, let me say it this way: some things are supposed to be hard because it's
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
stretch you and expand you in ways that you have no idea about yet. But you will never regret like expansion, in my opinion. It's just not going to be a thing.
Totally. This is why I have an issue with like life hacks.
Yeah,
Like not everything needs to be a hack. Sometimes you just got to go through it and it's going to be
yeah.
hard, you know,
Let's
like there's
grow.
not
How about
always going
that?
to be a shortcut. Like stop looking for a shortcut everywhere. You know, I
Yeah.
understand sometimes it's nice to want to make our lives easier. You know, I'm not against that or anything.
That's why I have a salad spinner.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why God gave us salad spinners, guys. Anyway, so let's talk about yoga. Let's talk about, because I want to talk about people like me who I know I'm a hypnotherapist. Okay. I know the power of the mind. I know the importance of having a well balanced, harmonized mind and body spirit. I have a lot of trouble with physical part of it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not the most physical person. And I know that's an affirmation, but I don't think I get what most people get out of it. So for people like me who are enthusiastic about it, like I know it's great. How do you explain to them or invite them to see it in a certain way where they might actually get more than they think out of it? Like, how do you explain the benefits, I guess, of just taking 10 minutes out of your day and doing one of your videos?
I mean, I don't want to discredit what you do because while the physical practice of yoga is amazing, and I will get into the benefits because I would love for everyone to do a little bit, you know, on a semi-regular basis at least. But like truly the best yoga is going to be meditation. The best yoga is the ability to self-reflect and to have a little bit of distance between yourself and the ego, to be able to see yourself in the world from a greater perspective, to feel a sense of
So, like
connection to
mind
something
yoga.
greater.
Are we talking about mind yoga?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because in the West, when we say yoga, we think, oh, getting on my yoga mat and doing some
Yeah,
poses, right? But
absolutely.
it's not necessarily that. It can be mantra, it can be mudra, it can be pranayama, your breathing techniques, it can be your meditation practices. But for people
Okay.
who are interested specifically in getting on their yoga mats and practicing physical poses, there
Mm.
are tremendous benefits. My main motivation at this point in my life, I'm 32 years old. I'm not old. I'm not super young. I'm 32, you know, that
I'm with
will
you.
look different.
37 over here. I'm right in
Yeah.
there with you.
I have noticed lately my mind, I'm really kind of hyper obsessed with this idea of being as comfortable in my body for as long as I can. I'm very much connected to this, like, my eldest self, and really trying to imagine what my life will look like if I'm lucky enough to live into my 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s. I look at my elders around me, how they move through life, how easy or how difficult simple daily tasks are of bending over to tie your shoelaces, of sitting down and standing back up, showering, like things
Yeah.
that now in our 30s, we're not really worrying about that too much. We don't really
Yeah.
think about it. But at the end of the day, like when you're in your 20s and 30s, I feel like there's a lot of an emphasis on like getting super fit, getting strong, getting into a handstand. Like a lot of people are motivated for yoga because they want to achieve some kind of pose. But when you think of your eldest self and you go a little bit beyond that, beyond the vanity of what the practice can bring, you realize that at the end of the day, you just need to feel good in your body. Like you need to be mobile. You need to be able to bend over and come back up. You need to be able to go to bed and get out of bed with comfort
Yeah.
and with ease. And those are the simple things that will make a huge amount of difference in your quality of life later on. That is my main motivation for getting on my yoga mat every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. I'm doing it because I want to be able to not be trapped inside my body as
Mm-hmm.
I get older, to have as much freedom of movement as I can. I think that's a huge component of not only physical health, but also your emotional and your mental health, like well-being
Yes.
in general. So that's my main one. Like I think it'll be different for everyone, but I've been really focused on like doing things not for the instant gratification of right now. Like sure, it'll be great if you can do, a headstand. That'll be super cool and you should
I
pat
could do
yourself
a
on the back.
headstand.
That's amazing. Like
I've
that's
never
amazing.
stopped doing headstands since I was a kid, just because I want to still see if I can do it every once in a while. And I
That's
still
cool.
can.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
And that's amazing. Like that's wonderful. And small things like that
I can't do
matter.
a
I don't want to
handstand though.
discredit them.
Right.
But that to me is my main benefit and my main motivation and purpose
Yes.
for having a sort of disciplined but still flexible yoga practice of my own at home.
Yeah. And first of all, I am motivated again. Thank you very much. It makes me want to
Amazing.
do yoga. Um, and I think that does, it resonates with yoga, and it also resonates with a lot, basically every other thing in life, where your practice is not necessarily going to look the same as everyone else's. And that is not only okay, but probably necessary, because if I sat here and tried to do the same spiritual practice or yoga practice or exercise practice as what I see other people doing that is working for them, if I
Yeah.
try to do it and it doesn't resonate, then I don't, but there are people who will take it in and be like, oh, I must be doing it wrong. Oh, it must not work for me. Oh, it must, whatever. And it just means that you got to tweak it. Do something that does feel good. Maybe start with 5 minutes a day. And that's true for yoga and meditation and all this sorts of stuff. Like it's probably not going to look the same as it does for someone else. It probably won't. And
Yeah.
that's a really good thing, because you're very unique. And you should be.
And that's a practice in non-attachment in itself, because you'll notice that your own needs and wants and desires and the way that you treat yourself and you move, the way you eat, the way you practice, your spiritual well-being will change from year
Yes.
to year, from season to season. What worked for you 5 years ago might not work anymore, and what you're doing today will probably need to be adapted in the future and changed. And we need to not be so rigid in what we think is right and what we think is good and what we think we should be doing, and instead allow ourselves to be like, well, to be honest, it works or it doesn't. And when I first got online, one thing that I made sure that I really wanted to promise myself right off the bat, I was like, I don't want to talk about food and diet. I was really surprised, like my first few videos when I went online, some of the most common requests I got on videos were like, what I eat in a day. What do you eat? What's your diet?
We're
I got
obsessed
so
with
many
food.
requests. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, I'm a yoga teacher. I'm not talking about food. And I kind of made that promise to myself early on. And I told people, I was like, you're not going to really hear me talk about that. I'm not interested in that, for the same reason what you were saying. What is going to work for me might not work for someone else. Food is so personal and so triggering to everyone. Like we take it so, it's,
Yes.
I don't know a single person who doesn't have some kind of emotional tie with food in some way, whether positive or negative, and I was like, I don't want to play that game. Like, I want you to do what works for yourself and to explore that for yourself. I don't ever want people to be projecting Like I'm a person too. I'll get triggered by it too. If people start
Absolutely.
commenting on what I'm eating, no, no, no. I'm
Yeah.
stepping far away from that. But it's the same with your yoga practice, or any other part of your lifestyle. Like I share some parts of it and I keep some parts of it to myself. But at the end of the day, I'm choosing it because it's what works for me. And I'm giving myself lots of grace that tomorrow I might need to start from scratch because it might be totally different. And that's
And that's
fine.
okay. And you know why that's okay? Because it will feel good. The worst thing
Yeah.
you can do for your mindset or your, exercise routine or your morning routine is to do something that doesn't feel good. Like I know I've done that. I'm sure a lot of people that are listening have done that. It just sets you up in the wrong way, the complete wrong way, as the opposite effect almost. So as long
Yeah,
as what you're
totally.
doing feels good, I don't think you can really go wrong. We need to start doing more things that feel good, is what I'm trying to say. Just because they feel good, and that they're healthy and good for us. And I know I never regret doing yoga. Every time I do it, and I'm like, Lindsay, the end of this. You know how this ends. You're going to be happy. So just
Why
do
don't
it.
you want to? Like, what's
Well,
the
it's just
resistance?
for me. It's okay. You want to know what it is? I guarantee this is what it is. 99% of the time is I'll get up. I'll get the kids ready for school. I got 3 of them. I get them ready for school. I send them off. 2 out of 3 anyway. I come up here. I do my setup for my day, which is mostly administrative. I'm not going to lie. So in my head, I think I don't have time is what it is. Even
Yeah.
though it's 10 minutes, even though it's 5 minutes, I'm sure you hear this all the time. I feel like I could be using my time in a better way. And I know that's a lie. I know it is because every time I do it, I'm like, you could not have done this. You could not have done something better. This is what you should have done. And I'm glad that you did it. Yeah, it's the time aspect. For sure.
I mean, that does sound like a busy morning. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I don't know if I'd be as diligent with my practice if I had to hustle some kids out of the
Well,
house.
I hear that. And that's what I feed myself. And then I have to, on the days that I'm like really a good coach with myself, I say, Lindsay, come on. It's 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes. It's 5 minutes. Take 1
Yeah.
minute and do a stretch. Do some morning stretches, do some neck bends, and get to work. You could do something.
Yeah.
And then most of the time, I just don't think about it because I'm just so busy, right? But not necessarily productive. It's
I mean,
frazzling.
yeah, I get it. But like, this is why like people sometimes are like, what is your exact morning routine? And I'm like, well, I don't really have an exact ones because sometimes I
Yeah.
have one and sometimes I don't. Like I'm very flexible with it. I do try to get on my mat every day, but it's not always in the morning. It's not always at night. It's not always in the afternoon. Like it'll really change on the
Mhm.
kind of day that I have and the time that I have. And where I'm at in my life. And sometimes that yoga
Yeah.
practice is just a little bit of breath work before going to
Okay, so
bed.
can I ask you a really important question? This is
Sure.
this is big time. What do you do, or if anything, what do you do on the days where you wake up and you're in maybe not in a funk, but you're just not really feeling it? Maybe you're going through something, maybe you're extra stressed out. How do you give your body and your mind that when you are so far from motivated? If that makes sense.
It's funny because I've noticed for myself in my life, the times in my life where I am the most in need of a consistent yoga practice are the times where I least want to do it. Like I almost have an
Dang, I must
aversion.
really be in need.
Yeah, I come up with
It's true.
excuses. I feel like I'm not someone who tends towards depression. I tend towards anxiety. I'm a very like future oriented person. So
Yeah.
when I get into this state of overwhelm of thinking I have too much to do, I'm overwhelmed with life, there are personal conflicts, I almost feel paralyzed and like I
Mhm.
cannot move. Like it feels like I physically cannot do downward dog because I have to stay in my mind and think, 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 think. I have to problem solve for hours sitting in silence.
Yeah.
And that is not what I need. That is the opposite of what I need. I need to get out of my head and into my body, like to actually embody and to process. I've gotten pretty good at just stepping on my yoga mat. I've done that and like that has been my kind of dedicated practice is even when I don't want to, I just sit on my yoga mat or I do a child's pose. Usually if I do one pose, 90% of the time I'll want to do another and another and another and another. And then
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 minutes have gone by and I've practiced. There have been a few times where I've stepped on my mat, I gave it a good 5 minutes, it ain't happening, that's fine. I get up, I leave, I'm doing something else. No pressure, no judgment, no shame, no expectation. I'm doing what I need to do.
I
But
can feel the
most of
collective like energy shift by you just saying, as a fantastically successful yoga instructor, guru, expert, as somebody like you saying, if I can't even do it for 5 minutes, I don't make myself do it for 5 minutes.
I'm not going to do it.
Giving literally everybody listening permission to give themselves more grace, chill out, do what feels good, and know that it's okay. Like,
It's not the end of the world.
it's not the end of the
fine.
world.
It's
No,
okay.
exactly.
And sometimes I need something totally different. Like sometimes when I'm in those difficult states, I just need therapy, actually. And it's not about yoga. It's because I need my therapist, or I need to talk to my girlfriend, or I need nature. I need to be outside, whether that's moving or not moving. Or actually, something that almost always works for me is a shower, like cleansing water. There's
Yeah.
something about that that is so powerful and helps to really reset you. But I find that tip to just step on your yoga mat, see if there's one pose that you want to do. Most of the time you'll want to do a few more, and then you'll be able to kind of embody yourself and get out of your head and into, feeling a little bit more. And it's a lot easier to then process what you're going through from that place rather than trying to analyze it and problem solve it from a thinking perspective. But it's not fail proof. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers, unfortunately. I really, really wish I did. My life would be a lot easier.
Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibin' It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibin' It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.